HMAS Torres docked at Lee Wharf with all the usual efficiency of the Navy. The ship is part of the teeth of the RAN, being the latest destroyer escort in service and carries state-of-the-art weaponry. Built primarily as an anti-submarine vessel, the ship is fitted with an advanced missile system to put the bite on enemy craft. The system was designed and built in Australia, and the Navy says it's the most accurate of its type in the world. In addition, the Torres is equipped with two 4.5-inch guns and Seacat air missiles. 80 of the crew will be representing the Navy in the Anzac Day March, which starts from Pacific Park at 9:15 tomorrow. The ship is open to the public from 1 to 3 on Saturday and from 1 to 5 on Sunday.
The team have been training tremendously, and we're looking forward to starting with a win.
How do you think Steve will start them?
Well, I'm quite sure, obviously, he'll start Jerry Everett and Ivan Daniels, our two imports. They should obviously play quite a lot, as well as Wayne McDaniels and Mike Johnson. They will certainly be on the court for the majority of time. And depending on the makeup of the opposition, he's got a lot to choose from between Sean Dennis in the guard position or in the forward spot, Peter Barton, Brian Dick or Stewie Begg. Any of those could start on any given game.
Sure. Sean Dennis is a young fellow that has caught the eye early this year, hasn't he?
Sean has played tremendous. He played a lot of youth league last year, which was good for him. He sat on our bench and come on for a couple of minutes on a lot of games. But he's really matured over that time, and he's really been probably the form player in the pre-season tournaments.
Dennis, we look at the scoreboard and it says Eastside Melbourne, but we know them better under another name, I suppose.
They'll be much the same team. There's no doubt with Barry Barnes coaching. He doesn't give anything away, Barry. He'll be up there shouting and yelling as he always is, so that won't change. They might change the name of the team, but they certainly won't change Barry Barnes.
Tonight, first night, expecting a big crowd, I suppose.
Yeah, there seems to be a tremendous amount of interest, and phone's been running hot all day, and we're all set to go, and I'm sure that we will get a good crowd.
The local amateur Newcastle Rugby League competition got underway at the #1 University Oval today, the highlight match between Waratah's Town Hall side against the visiting HMAS Torres. Early in the first half it was hard to tell just who was the stronger side, but when Town Hall in the red and black led at half-time, it wasn't long before the Sailors went down to the locals 30-10. But HMAS Torres will soon be back in Newcastle waters, and the league team has already called for a challenge. Meanwhile, results from the two other games played saw Wanji defeat Newcastle All Blacks #1 side 24-6, while University defeated the All Blacks #2 team 34-4.
It was a lucky escape from a shooting exercise that went very wrong for Peter Ryan yesterday. He had been out with a friend at Salt Bay on the southern end of the Swansea Channel when he was accidentally shot.
There was a couple of young boys down at the Salts Bay target shooting with a .22 calibre rifle.
Right.
One of the young fellows thought that the rifle had discharged and was about to put it away when it discharged again and wounded the other person.
The bullet went in through Peter's chest and out through his shoulder. Paramedics rushed to the scene when Peter's shooting companion raised the alarm. But because he was in an inaccessible spot and the rescue helicopter was not available, it was more than 2 hours before he was loaded into an ambulance and taken to Belmont Hospital. All the people at this function have bought a block of land at a new development called Paradise Beach Estate on the Morisset Peninsula.
I'd like to introduce
Last night,
to you
the developer,
the managing
Urambra
director
Estates,
fielder.
invited them all to
And,
dinner
if
at
you
the
look at him very
Morisset
closely,
Country
he's a
Club.
good...
It was a chance for everyone to meet their new neighbours, but they were also in the running for a new house, which would be built on their land. The tension grew as Lake Macquarie's Mayor Jeff Pasterfield drew the $45,000 Milby home.
One.
The winners, David and Valerie Bailey, were not present to hear the good news, but their son Paul had gone to the function to stand in for them. He says his parents will be ecstatic when they hear that they have won.
They always wanted to live in the country because they were born up in Grafton, and Maclean, Dad was. And this is just going to make it much quicker for them now that they've got the house.
So what do you think your mum's reaction's going to be when she hears it?
Faint. I think she's got to faint.
The General arrived at the RAF base right on time in an Iroquois helicopter after a short flight from Richmond Air Base west of Sydney. A 50-strong ceremonial guard of honour was present to welcome the man in charge of defending Australia. As Chief of the Defence Forces, General Gresham commands the Army, Air Force and Navy and is responsible for maintaining our forces at a state of readiness at all times. General Gresham revealed that the government has his recommendation on where to build the Navy's replacement submarines, but would be drawn on Newcastle's chances.
There is a defence interest. We've got to have good submarines. So the assessment of the characteristics of the submarine itself. But then it's an enormously expensive project. We are talking about the best part of $4 billion. And such a project obviously has got a major impact in Australian industry. So there is not only the defence side of it, but there's the industrial side and the impact on Australia. So it's quite a complex decision.
Because of manpower restrictions, the General stressed the importance of technology in providing a small but potent deterrent in all three forces. He also made it clear that our joint facilities with the Americans are here to stay.
The government have made it very clear that the joint facilities that we have with the United States and Australia have a very important part to play in any disarmament process, in the process of monitoring any agreements that are made, and in that sense we believe it makes a very real contribution to the whole Western position. And yes, we're very happy to have them.
When it comes to a threat to Australia, the General sees two areas for concern: the Soviet presence in the Pacific and the continuing civil unrest in the Philippines.
So while there is a benign environment at present, we have to look towards the uncertain future, or a less certain future. And that's why the essence of our defence posture is maintaining some forces ready to deal with anything that might crop up at short notice, but also maintaining the basis for expansion should anything more serious develop in the future. That's why we do it.
The member for Newcastle, Alan Morris, has had a hectic couple of days meeting representatives of the German and Swedish contenders and a caucus subcommittee set up to investigate the contract. Mr Morris concedes that both Cockham's and HDW have expressed a preference for building the submarines in Adelaide, but feels Newcastle's is not a lost cause.
The chance may be slight because of the fact that both tenderers favoured Adelaide in their proposals. However, since October last year, there have been a number of quite important changes in Newcastle, one of which, of course, is the workers' compensation changes in New South Wales. Second one has been the state dockyard changes. And perhaps thirdly, the study by Dr. Jensen from Brisbane University regarding the economic impact on Australia of the siting of the submarine project.
Right, now you're putting all those points to the two tenderers.
Yes, we put them to the tenders, and in fact, quite frankly, both tenders are now saying that there is no commercial disadvantage in terms of locating in Newcastle. And that at least means that it's more neutral, and we're trying to ensure that in the evaluation process the government takes into account the most recent data, not necessarily the information put forward back in November last year.
For the 7 residents of Bell Cottage, this week has been a worrying time. Up until yesterday, they weren't sure where they'd be living after today. The dilemma was caused by funding. The state government maintains it's not responsible for the running of cottages whose occupants come from the community instead of fifth schedule hospitals like Stockton. It says the Federal Department of Community Services should foot the bill. But after a delegation to Premier Barry Unsworth this week, Bell Cottage has been given 2 months' worth of funding and, more importantly, time to lobby the Commonwealth.
Well, I thought from tomorrow, I thought this is not going to open anymore, but turn around from Mitchell, it did happen and the funding is coming, so we stay open for the rest. So I'm pleased.
The cottage is seen as a transitional training centre where residents learn living skills and then move out into the community to lead a more independent life.
Well, Bell Cottage, I guess, as well as providing training and accommodation for the people that are currently living here, has been a scheme that's provided a service for the community-based people with intellectual handicap.
As a relative, Pat, it must be a great relief for you to know that it's going to be open for another couple of months at least.
Oh, for sure, but this is just the beginning of the fight to keep the whole plan going, and also to create more cottages to help the community people.
BHP's annual reports from the past 100 years may never hit the bestseller lists, but they do form the basis of Professor Parker's study. Last night he presented his findings at a public forum, including a panel of representatives from the accounting profession, commerce and the trade union movement. Professor Parker believes Australian companies are less inclined to disclose information about their workings and decisions than their English and American counterparts. He says that while English companies are heavily regulated, American corporations disclose information voluntarily. He says BHP and other Australian companies have nothing to fear from this new openness.
They are increasingly being required to be accountable both to their local community, to the public at large, to the electorate, to the government regulators and so on.
Earlier this month, Barry Unsworth chaired a state cabinet meeting at Cessnock. Today, it's the Liberals' turn. The Shadow Cabinet will meet in Newcastle at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. A media conference will also be held at the City Hall. The meeting is one of a number scheduled outside Sydney. The Liberal Party has indicated it will hotly contest country seats in the next general election. Mr Griney yesterday launched an advertising campaign outlining the party's policies in the lead-up to the election due within the next 12 months.
4 or 5 of the Crows have always been there.
This is a picture of a bag similar to the one carried by Cheryl Birchall the night she was killed. It's a light grey vinyl handbag with light and dark grey patchwork on the front.
It's very significant to us in that we know that certainly she left home, it was in her possession, seen by a number of witnesses, to be carrying the bag. It hasn't been found, and we consider it most important. If it is located, it will assist us greatly.
Cheryl Birchall's body was found on Thursday morning, April 23rd. Despite an extensive search of Throsby Creek, no sign of the murder weapon, which is believed to be a long, thin-bladed knife, or any of her possessions were found. She was last seen on Wednesday night, April 22nd, at about 10:30 in the Royal Oak Hotel in Mayfield. Police believe she was killed by one of her clients, and they are appealing to anyone who may have seen the dead woman at that time to come forward.
Well, say that all candidates are good candidates, but before anyone even...
According to witnesses, 2 Vietnamese men fitting the description had been seen earlier in a nearby hotel and had left after a heated argument. The shooting took place just 2 blocks away from where it's believed the offender lived and sought refuge, clutching a .223 semi-automatic high-powered rifle. All available police and rescue squads were called to the scene. Myola Street was evacuated and police warned all onlookers to keep out of sight behind the barricades. Late this afternoon, the Newcastle Special Weapons and Operations Squad had surrounded the house and attempts were being made to negotiate with the man through an interpreter. At this stage, it's not known if the man is alone in the house. He's described as desperate and dangerous, and police are now waiting until dark before any attempts are made to storm the house.
Look at the figures.
Is There Heroin in My Coffee is the first production this year for the 2 till 5 theatre company. Like most of its other plays, the script and characters have been devised by the young cast members, who this time are exploring the issue of drugs from within the mind.
The play is set in the mind of a drug user, and in fact, halfway through it somehow becomes the mind of 2 drug users, or the minds of 2 drug users. And that mind is inhabited by 7 very unusual representative characters of the outside world, and the play deals with the way this first-time drug user and long-term drug user interact with each other.
For director Barney Langford, it's going to be a busy year. The company is still looking for a permanent residence in Newcastle since the Wood Street Theatre closed down last year. For the first time, the group hopes to begin touring into the Upper Hunter. And after clinching the rights for the popular TV show Theatre Sports, the company will begin the venture in Newcastle later this month. As well, the 2 till 5 Theatre has expanded its membership, just in time to take its place on stage for the biggest show of them all.
The company has been chosen to take part in the bicentennial celebrations next year. What role will it be playing?
Shopfront Theatre is organising an International Youth Theatre Festival in Sydney in January, and that'll involve companies from all over the world coming to Sydney as part of that, and 2 till 5 has been the only other company from New South Wales to be invited to that, so I guess that's testimony to the quality of our work.
Is There Heroin in My Coffee opens at Free Wheels Theatre this Saturday night.
With the government's AIDS campaign pushing for prevention rather than cure, the appearance of condoms on the supermarket shelf comes as no surprise. Apart from abstinence, the government says the use of condoms is the only way to ensure that the disease is not transmitted sexually. While retailers don't plan to advertise condoms on special, no product goes onto the shelves without some form of marketing. The Australian condom manufacturers say buy locally made products because they're the only ones that comply with the strict guidelines of the Australian Standards Association. But this particular product, which is made in Korea, says it's the official supplier for the Australian Defence Department. Sometimes it's hard to know who to believe. Most shoppers agreed with the move, but there was one dissenter.
I think they should teach people differently. You know, get at the cause of the problem and not the preventative.
Well, I think it's for the good of people's health, isn't it? It's nothing to be ashamed of, the young people.
Thank you.
Police believe the elderly pedestrian had stumbled as he attempted to cross the railway line at Wickham just after 8 o'clock last night. Witnesses say the man had fallen down onto the path of an urban passenger train, travelling from Hamilton to Newcastle station when he was hit. It's believed the train was travelling at a speed of 80 kilometres and was unable to stop. The man was killed instantly. Police say he was from Wickham and was alone at the time of the accident.
Police believe there are no suspicious circumstances, but it's not the first fatal here at the Wickham crossing.
Around about 6 months ago, there was a young fellow in his early 20s was killed at the same crossing here. In a similar type of thing. He was walking across the track.
Is it a dangerous crossing for pedestrians?
Well, it can be dangerous, particularly if you don't cross at the correct places. There's signs there to tell you to cross through the pedestrian crossing gates over here. And if the lights and the bells are sounding, of course you don't go across. And of course they were sounding it on this particular occasion.
Last night's dinner at Montepio Court served two purposes. Not only was it a fundraiser to help the national team on their way to the World Culinary Arts Championships in Canada, but it provided an important practice run for the 4 cooks representing Australia. And what better menu to prepare than the one which will be served to judges from all over the world, who will put their taste buds to the test in Vancouver in July. Included in the Australian team is the chef of Montepio Court, Scott Webster, who already is an international gold medalist in his field. The team has chosen 2 dishes which feature Australian produce in a novel way. Jumbuck in a tucker bag and turkey wallabadar will compete against dishes from 15 other countries. It's taken more than 4 months of experiments and detailed tastings to make Brigade Manager Barry Wright confident that the judges' palates will be pleased.
Judges are not only the people from the international panel of judges from Europe and North America and other countries, but the public who come in to eat the food that we are putting up in that international restaurant. And it depends, there is a certain amount of rivalry, not official, but it's a very big thing as to which country sells out first. I'm very confident that they'll do very well. We've got a team of young experts from Australia. They're all practicing very hard and they're all really keen to get out there and win gold for Australia.